How you guys doing today? My name is Merlin Joshi, and today I've got another 1 hour track for you guys. So, without further ado, let's take a listen to what it sounds like. It's been far too long since I made an actual dubstep track, so finally making one again, it feels pretty sweet. This episode of 1 hour tracks is going to be pretty sound design intensive because of most of the hour that I spent making this song actually went into the sound design. So, without further ado, let's check out the first bass that actually shows up. It sounds like this. Minus a little reverb, but you get the idea. So, here's the patch. So I started with Monster 9, the wavetable, put a little bend plus minus on it, turned the volume all the way down, right? And then I opened oscillator B, put on a saw wave, and then I used FM from A just to give it a little more grit. Now, LFO 1 is controlling the bend plus and minus of Monster 9, and the FM from A for oscillator B. It is also controlling the cutoff of the high pass filter and the frequency knob right here. Now, what's interesting about this is I don't have the LFO on trigger, so it's just off. So when it plays, you can see that it starts on the second half of the pattern when it plays that second time. So it just gives it a bit of variation. Now let's move on to the effects. I first put a distortion on it, a little bit of downsampling. Without it, it sounds pretty bare. But with it, it gives it that grit. It gives it that nice high-end destruction that we want. I then put a hyper dimension on it, not using the hyper, just using the dimension. Small size, large mix, rocket-powered sound fans know what I'm talking about. And I put on the compressor, just gained it up a little bit. And a little bit of chorus, put it on high pass filter, because I don't want the lower frequencies in this sound to be chorused. Then I put a delay on it, which is just making it sound metallic. And that's how I got this sound. Now, the interesting thing with all of these sounds is I actually have them layered with another chord sound. Together, they sound like this. And alone, they sound like that. So these chords are actually very similar to the first bass patch. I actually just cloned it and kept everything in it the same, except for the oscillator A. I just put it back on basic shapes, and I turned off the FM for oscillator B, so it's more of just like a saw patch. But I kept the filter on, took the distortion off, kept the dimension expander, the compressor, the chorus, and the delay all on it. That is that patch, making it sound like that. So this is what the second bass sounds like. So, I started off with Reese 2. I automated the wavetable's position with LFO 1. And I also sent it to the high pass filter. And I'm automating the cutoff of the high pass filter with LFO 1 as well. LFO 2 I'm using to automate oscillator B's amplitude or level. And that is going at 1/8 triplets. So it kind of gives it this shaky feeling as the bass plays. Now moving on to the effects, I started off with a distortion. I used a rectify distortion, because without it, it sounds good, but I wanted it to be more broken sounding, and I thought rectify was a good idea for that, so I had the mix about 0.5% and drive about less than half. And that's what the distortion is doing it. I have a similar chorus effect like I had on the other bass, and a compressor, and then a little bit of hyperdimension. Small size, large mix, and then my EQ is taking 0.8 of a decibel away from the high end. Now let's move on to the chord layers that are on top of it. Just like the other sound, I cloned the bass before it to get the chord sound. So I just turned off oscillator A, kept oscillator B on, the distortion is gone, and the hyperdimension is gone. So together they sound like this. Now to get that high-pitched sound that you're hearing when this automation is on right here, I am using a crystallizer, obviously. So I've just got my pretty standard crystallizer effects going on here. Low, dry, wet mix. Pitched. I actually pitched it up 2 octaves this time. Low splice, low delay. And this one has a pretty high recycle rate. So it's really pushing those high frequencies. Moving on, I made one more bass for this song, and it sounds like this. It's literally just used for 3 notes at a time, and it's pretty much just a saw wave. It's pretty much just a saw wave. So I've got some noise in this one. Oscillator A and B are both on. I've got oscillator B up an octave and 7 semitones up. And I'm automating the fine pitch of oscillator B, so it gives it a little bit of a vibrato on it. Oscillator A is going to a low pass, which is not being automated at all. So next thing in the effects, we've got just some low end that I'm cutting out on the EQ. So then I moved on to the distortion. I'm using the sine shaper distortion type, and I have the filter set on post, so that means the filter is affecting the sound post to distortion, and that's just cutting a little of the high end off. Without the distortion, it sounds like this. With it, it sounds like this. It really, really beefens it up once you put that distortion on there. Next, I put a chorus on, similar thing, high pass filter, the half mix, and then a compressor. That's about it. And no chords for this sound. I kind of just left it the way it was because I didn't feel like every note needed a chord. Last thing I could talk about is the sub. The sub is what I started with, actually, just making sure I have a good foundation. Now, the sub is literally just a basic sine wave, octave down a little bit, and some bright white noise on top of it. Now, I've got some distortion on it as well, just a little bit of soft clip, and then a compressor. And that beefed it up as much as I needed it to be. Not much else to say in the world of effects. I've just got the reverb sweeps. Right there, you can hear it. And that's pretty much it. Not much interesting stuff going on in the drums. I've got hi-hats that come in on the second half. I got a little build up here. I used a Virtual Riot loop and some toms from him. Now, for the build, I was running out of time. I had like 3 minutes to make the rest of the track, and I needed to make the build. So I literally just took every single sound from the drop, all the basses and whatnot. Recorded it all out, and then used it as a sample in the build-up. I literally just low passed it in until the drop hit, and then that's how it happened. It kind of gives your listener a way to get familiar with how the drop's going to go before it actually happens. And it's not taking away from it that much because it's being low passed in. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. I love doing sound design things. I love doing dubstep. It's been too long since I've made some bass music. If you want me to finish this one, leave a comment down below, and maybe I will. Who knows? But until next time, guys, this has been 1 Hour Tracks, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!